much would you be willing to pay for a monthly supply of drinking water? Where would you cap that price? Would you be willing to spend $50 a month? How about $500 a month? See, the irony in that question is that no matter how much you'd be willing to spend, you'd have to be willing to spend more should it be demanded of you, because water is a necessity to your life. The liquid in this vial is vital to my life. This is insulin, a medication which I need to survive because I'm type 1 diabetic. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when I was 11 years old after having been increasingly sick for about 3 months. And during that time, I was really living in limbo. I was eating and drinking so much it was absurd, and I started getting these debilitating headaches. Between the headaches and the fatigue I was experiencing, I was asleep almost constantly in class and in the car, and virtually any time I sat still. I was left undiagnosed much longer than the typical patient, and due to that fact, I was experiencing pronounced ketoacidosis, which was causing my body to consume its fat stores, and when those were gone, my muscle tissue, so I lost a lot of weight. By my diagnosis day, I was cold and pale and rail thin, and we went in for a final blood work panel at the end of those few months, hoping we might figure something out, and instead received a knock at our door from the Eagle County Sheriff, who was there to escort me to the emergency room in Vail, where I then spent the night in the ICU. The average adult blood sugar should not go above 180 milligrams per deciliter, and the average patient slips into a coma around 800 milligrams per deciliter, with extreme risk for cardiac arrest starting at that point as well. And when I was diagnosed, my blood sugar was well over 1,200 milligrams per deciliter. The fact that I'm alive today is incredibly lucky, and the only reason that I am is because of, yes, the doctors and nurses who were there to treat me that night, but the medication which I was given, insulin. Insulin is much more comparable to water than it is anything you might pick up at the drugstore for a common cold. I need this every day, 3 times a day for meals alone, or I will die. Just as surely as if I never drank water, and just as surely as I would have that day if I hadn't been treated. And how much does this vial run for in an out-of-pocket situation? $480. While the price for 1 vial is astounding, many diabetics go through an upwards of 3 vials a month, and I'll let you do the math there. It makes my stomach turn because there are diabetics who can't afford all of their insulin for the month and must ration to be able to eat it all, but their blood sugar still becomes dangerously high. I am incredibly fortunate. I qualify for insurance, which means that vial is only $10 a month for me, but I'm constantly aware of the fact that I am one of the lucky ones and that there are others who are just as good and kind and worthy and bottom line in need who don't have the ability to pay for their medicine. They are the unlucky ones, the ones who pay out-of-pocket costs for a medication which keep them alive. The people without insurance or with an insurance plan that doesn't cover enough can end up asking themselves at the end of the month, will I make enough money to stay alive? Now for some background, I'd like to talk about how this issue begins and how it's allowed to continue the way it has. When a manufacturer creates a drug, they also create a list price. A pill may only cost pennies to produce, but the manufacturer lists the drug at the price they feel it is valued at. For drugs to reach pharmacies, wholesale companies come in, negotiate prices down, and sell the drug down the line, and your insurance companies hire more middlemen called pharmacy benefit managers who negotiate rebates off the price of the drug. The higher the rebate, the more the insurance company is willing to cover and still make a profit, but with the continual rise of drug prices, they have to pay more, so they're willing to cover less. But the bottom line in this situation is that the drug manufacturers hold all the power in their decision on the list price because everything falls into place after that. The manufacturers of overpriced drugs are generally those who hold monopolies over a field. When there's no competition, these companies may not only set astronomical prices, but deny initial negotiation by wholesalers and secondary negotiation by pharmacy benefit managers. They don't have to be worried about selling their product because people need it. I need insulin to treat my type 1 diabetes, and she needs beta blockers to treat her hypertension, and he needs Kalydeco to treat his cystic fibrosis, and we pay for it. These companies will keep the market cornered so long as they maintain the patents on the drug's formula. When Frederick Banting discovered insulin in 1923, he sold the drug's patent for $1 to avoid the exact pharmaceutical price gouging we see with it now. But the 3 main producers of insulin, Eli Lilly, Novo Nordisk, and Sanofi, have made microscopic so-called improvements to the drug's formula to keep it under patent all these years. And of course, insulin isn't the only drug that's held above consumers' heads and priced above their means. Although insulin prices have risen 11% annually since 2001, Mylan raised the price of the EpiPen 500% between 2007 and 2016, from just under $100 to over $600. The average price of AbbVie's drug Humira has climbed from $19,000 a year to $60,000 a year, and in 2020 alone, 460 common necessary medications in the United States rose an average of 5.4%. To be allowed to raise drug prices like this should be criminal, but there's virtually no legislation in place to put checks on these manufacturers and their power-hungry pricing. And as long as these patents are held, the price gouging will continue. There will be people who know that they cannot afford their medication for the coming month, who will ration, who will be terrified of what will happen without it. There will be parents who don't know if they can afford their child's medication for the coming month and will wonder if their financial deficit will be the death of their child. And I say will, but these scenarios are playing out every single day, right now, darker and deeper than you can even imagine. It is immoral to withhold necessities to people's livelihood. We have soup kitchens and we have homeless shelters, but we have virtually no institutions in place for people with needs just as real and just as basic as eating and drinking. Where are their institutions? Where are our institutions? I know that a lot of you in this audience might not understand what I'm talking about, but for those of you who do, I know that this resonates very personally. For those of you who don't, I hope that you will never experience this strain, but that what I'm saying right now might help you gain a glance into the lens that some of us have to see the world through. We can all be a little bit ignorant to the issues that don't affect us, and that's not our fault. We're just not aware. But when ignorance is disassembled and we're able to see through lenses that we couldn't before, that's when real compassion can begin. And that's what I'm hoping we can all take away from this today, is compassion, and more than that, empathy. Knowing that this might not be an issue which plagues you, but does your friends, your family, your coworkers, your neighbors, and recognizing that this is an issue which might not affect you at all, but does countless people who you interact with every day is so important to this cause. The implications of this situation can be stifling when it's got at alone. But with support, that's when it comes with change. And that's the second part of what I'm hoping we can all take away from this today. This needs to be turned into legislation. There have been steps in the right direction. The Affordable Care Act recognized an issue in the way we price health care, made it more affordable for more people. And this issue was realized in its true form when Jared Polis signed a bill in 2019 that caps insulin payments for Colorado residents with insurance at $100, regardless of amount needed and provider. And those patients who are insured breathe a sigh of relief. But for those who aren't, this has to be turned into change. And I know that not all of us in this audience are even able to vote yet, but I hope that as we all move towards a poll, we can contemplate what effect we might have in a vote and recognize that we might be able to help millions of nameless faces behind legislation that could change lives. The change so many people need is only going to be able to happen when the people it has no effect on decide that their cause, that our cause, is worthy of support. Thank you.